With 23 laps to go at Pocono, something almost unbelievable was happening. Christopher Bell, a driver who had spent the entire afternoon buried around 20th place, a driver racing with a broken wrist, a driver who hadn't won a single race all season, was suddenly leading the race. Not just leading it, pulling away, building a gap of nearly 10 seconds over the best car in NASCAR right now, Denny Hamlin. For a few magical minutes, it looked like one of the greatest stories of the entire season was about to be written. The injured driver, the winless season, the fractured wrist he could barely steer with, and somehow, against all of it, about to steal a victory at Pocono with a brilliant, gutsy gamble. You could feel it building. The fairy tale was right there. And then, it ran dry. Literally. As the leaders came around to take the white flag, signaling 1 lap to go, Christopher Bell's car sputtered. He was out of fuel. The gamble that had put him in the lead had asked his car to go just a little bit farther than it could, and in the cruelest possible way, with the finish line almost in sight, his shot at a miracle evaporated. He finished 26th. So today, we're going to break down exactly how this heartbreaking, heroic afternoon unfolded. The broken wrist, the all-day struggle, the audacious gamble that nearly worked, and the remarkable thing Bell said afterward that tells you everything about the kind of competitor he is. Stay with me, because this is a story about courage, heartbreak, and the cruel math of racing. Welcome back to Freedom Line News, the channel where we don't just chase the drama, we actually break down what really happened on the track. If you're new here, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button, because this community is growing every week, and we cover these NASCAR stories with the heart and the detail they truly deserve. All right, let's get into it. Now here's the honest truth about most of Bell's race. For the vast majority of the afternoon, it was a struggle, a real grind. It started in qualifying. Bell could only manage the 22nd starting spot, and he was the first to admit it wasn't good enough. He called his own qualifying effort lackluster, explaining that having to go out early in the session really hurt his time. And from that deep starting position, he just couldn't climb. For lap after lap, Christopher Bell ran mired in the pack, stuck around 20th place, unable to make up ground. And the wrist was a big part of why. Bell was candid about it afterward. He explained that the injury genuinely affected him in the moments that mattered most, especially on restarts and in tight, close quarters racing. In his words, he just didn't have the ability to make sharp, quick corrections to the car. Think about what that means. On a restart, when cars are bunched together and you need lightning-fast hands to react and defend your position, that's exactly when a broken wrist hurts you most. He said when he banged wheels with another car getting into a corner, or when there was a wreck in front of him he had to dodge, those sudden movements were the hardest. Interestingly, he said when he was out on his own, in clean air, the wrist didn't bother him nearly as much. But racing is rarely about clean air. It's about traffic, restarts, and split-second reactions. And that's where the injury quietly cost him all day long. So as the race wound toward its final stretch, Christopher Bell looked like a man heading for another quiet, forgettable 20th place finish in a season full of them. And then his crew chief decided to roll the dice. Here's where the story turns. With the race entering its final phase, Bell's crew chief, Adam Stevens, made a bold, calculated decision. A real gamble. The call was simple, but daring. Don't pit again. While other cars peeled off pit road for fresh tires and a full tank of fuel, Stevens told Bell to stay out and try to stretch his remaining fuel all the way to the finish. The math was brutal. It would require Bell to run more laps on a tank of gas than the car was really designed to do. But the logic was sound. Stuck in 20th, Bell had nothing to lose. A normal strategy would get him a normal, mediocre result. A gamble, if it worked, could get him a win. So they rolled the dice. And suddenly, the whole complexion of the race changed. As the cars who pitted cycled back, Christopher Bell found himself out front. With 23 laps to go, the driver who had run 20th all day was now leading the Great American Getaway 400. And he wasn't just barely hanging on either. Bell built a commanding lead, stretching it out to nearly 10 seconds over Denny Hamlin, the hottest driver in the sport. For those few minutes, it was magic. The injured driver, the winless season, the broken wrist. And there he was, pacing the field, with the checkered flag getting closer and closer. Even his own team could hardly believe what they were seeing. Before that final run, they'd been hoping at best for a top 5, and Stevens had even warned him there was almost no way they'd make it on fuel. And yet, there Bell was, leading, dreaming, so close you could almost touch it. But fuel mileage is a cruel master. And the very thing that put Bell in the lead was also the thing that would betray him. To make the fuel last, Bell had to save it, which meant lifting off the gas early, running slower than he wanted, babying the car. And as he conserved, that beautiful 10-second lead began to shrink. Denny Hamlin, with more fuel to burn, started reeling him in. Lap by lap, the gap closed. 10 seconds became 5. 5 became 2, and with about 4 to 5 laps remaining, the inevitable happened. Hamlin caught Christopher Bell and powered past him for the lead. But the real gut punch was still coming. Bell didn't just get past and settle for second. As the leaders roared around to take the white flag, the signal for the final lap, Bell's car ran completely out of fuel, empty. With essentially 1 lap to go after leading so much of the closing stretch, the tank ran dry. He had to limp to pit road, and instead of finishing on the lead lap near the front, Christopher Bell tumbled all the way down to a 26th place finish. From leading the race to 26th in the space of a few agonizing laps. Meanwhile, Denny Hamlin cruised on to victory, his 3rd win in a row, and a historic one at that. But for the number 20 team, there was only the bitter taste of what had been so close. A miracle that ran out of gas, quite literally, in the final mile. Now, here's where this story becomes about more than just a heartbreaking finish, because of how Christopher Bell responded to it. You'd expect a driver to be devastated, to be bitter, to talk about what could have been. After a winless, frustrating season, after racing with a broken wrist, after leading and losing it on empty, who could blame him for being crushed? But that's not what Bell did. Instead, he showed a perspective that tells you everything about his character. He said plainly that this one was not a woulda, coulda, shoulda. He pointed out that he'd had a lot of those moments this year, races that got away, results that should have been better. But this, he said, was different. This wasn't a mistake or a failure. This was a gamble. A roll of the dice from a team with nothing to lose that very nearly paid off in the biggest way. And rather than blame anyone, Bell actually applauded his crew chief for having the guts to try it. He praised the call to roll the dice. That's a remarkable mindset. Because he's right. When you've run 20th all day, a strategy that puts you in the lead with 23 to go isn't a failure. It's brilliant, aggressive racing. It just needed the fuel to stretch a tiny bit further. And his crew chief, Adam Stevens, summed up the whole situation perfectly. He talked about how hard this entire year has been for the team, how you throw a serious injury on top of it, and how Bell put all of that aside to do his job, physically, with a broken wrist, and mentally, with the weight of a tough season. Stevens called him a tough cookie, said his mind is focused on the right things, and that eventually it'll turn their way. And there was one more silver lining. Bell said that despite all the in-race difficulty, he actually felt no pain in his wrist after the race. So he made it through. He proved he could do it, and he came within a few drops of fuel of the feel-good story of the year. So what does this all mean as we look forward? Let me give you the honest picture because there's both good and bad here. On the championship front, Bell actually held up reasonably well. Despite the 26th place result, He leaves Pocono sitting about 70 points above the playoff cut line. That's a real cushion. It's not comfortable, and it's not where a driver of his talent wants to be, but he's not in immediate danger of missing the playoffs. The bigger issue remains the same one that's haunted his whole year. He's still winless, still searching for that breakthrough victory that would lock him in and change his entire season's momentum. And twice now, in back-to-back weeks, he's been right there with a shot. Running second at Michigan before the crash, running up front at Pocono before the fuel ran out. The speed and the opportunities are there. The results just aren't following. And then there's the immediate question, next week. Because the NASCAR Cup Series heads to San Diego, to that brand new street course at Naval Base Coronado, for one of the most anticipated races of the year. And a street course is a physically demanding, technical track full of hard braking and sharp corners. Exactly the kind of place where a broken wrist could be a real problem. When asked whether he'd be able to race there, Bell couldn't give a firm answer. He said simply that they'll see how the week progresses. So that's the cliffhanger heading into one of the biggest weekends of the season. Will Christopher Bell, bruised, broken, but unbroken in spirit, be able to climb back into that car in San Diego? Or will the injury finally force him to step aside? We'll be watching closely. Because if there's one thing this Pocono race proved, it's that you should never count Christopher Bell out, even when he's running on empty. So now I want to hear from you. Was the fuel gamble the right call? A brilliant roll of the dice that nearly won? Or too big a risk that cost Bell a solid finish? And do you think he should race at San Diego next week with that broken wrist? Or sit out to fully heal? Drop your thoughts down in the comments because I read them, and I already know this one is going to spark a debate. If this breakdown was worth your time, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to Freedom Line News, where we cover every NASCAR story with the detail it actually deserves. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.